they wrote was, I hate his guts.
Right.
So I got in touch with her and said, hang on a minute, there's a bit of difference between saying someone can be a bit nasty to hating their guts. I don't hate it, but now you've printed it, the damage is done. Geoff Britton's been this mystery drummer and this, that, and the other. I'm thinking that I would have perhaps done a better job than the guy that did the live stuff. And blow my own trumpet, I think I would have done. They were out of order, they were irresponsible. Here we are in a A division gig, and don't screw it up.
We always do this. We drift off, and I need to get it back on back on track so we go out the one hand clapping sessions. Well, Geoff, we finally got around to doing it after one or two false starts. Welcome in.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes, we're talking about, of course, 50 years on from the one-hand clapping sessions at Abbey Road with Wings during your stint there with them. I mean, 50 years ago. Does that seem like 50 years?
Well, nothing seems like 50 years when you get older. Everything seems like yesterday. But it did come as a real surprise. A pal phoned me up from America, assuming I already knew, to talk about it, and I didn't know anything about it. So, very nice surprise.
Okay, and I mean, the good thing is, we've spoken before in front of microphones and the like, so I don't have to ask you how you got the job with Paul and all of that, so relax. Okay, we don't have to go through that story again. But you hadn't been in the group that long, and there's a thing, you're a bit of a mystery. The fans know, because they followed Paul through the Beatles, but through Wings as well. But it was quite a short stint, but
yes.
You crammed plenty in there, including this.
Yes, we'd just come back from 6 weeks in America, staying on the farm in Nashville. So we were pretty tight. We'd been, just like any band would do, rehearsing in Curly Putman's garage. He wrote The Green, Green Grass of Home, and he was buzzing off for a holiday, and MPL rented it, and we just lived there and rehearsed every day, just like a band, any band would do, with that kind of facility and space. So we were pretty tight, and we'd rehearse those songs off of the wonderful, Band on the Run album. And so the idea behind it was to be filmed as kind of like a band in the studio, kind of warts and all. And Dave Litchfield, unfortunately, who's passed recently, came in to direct it, and literally just went in, set up. Jeff Emmerich was the engineer on board, and we just played that stuff live. And what you see is what you get. Some of it was full starts and did again, but generally there was no overdubbing. It's literally just the band playing those songs.
Yes, and now it's officially out. It came out as we talked last month in June 2024, and there are bits of it out there. I mean, I've seen a bit. My favourite one is, I've told you before, is that run-through of Jet from Band on the Run, because just the drums so totally different. I mean, there's a difference between that's considered sort of live drumming that you're doing there compared to Paul's playing in the studio in Nigeria on the album, because he played the drums on Band on the Run, of course. Yeah,
well, you see, Paul's not a drummer's drummer, no, but he's a beautiful musical drummer, and they're his songs. It's like Stevie Wonder plays drums on his songs. Now, if he had a studio guy in, it would be good but different, and he's complementing the songs from a studio to be on a record, and I'm playing the songs as if we're live. And usually you up the ante when it's live. You know, there's a bit more for the bottom end, and and that's what you get.
Yeah, that is the difference. I think it was the story with the Carpenters as well, because, as you know, Karen could play drums very well. But the mother, it was one of those situations where the parents were kind of overseeing everything. She had to ask why Karen wasn't playing drums on their albums. And it was Hal Blaine himself explaining that there's a difference between, because she was more of a live drummer. She'd rattle around the kit. More of a live drummer than doing the studio recordings, which called for reining in a bit, I suppose. Yeah, well, Hal Blaine, of course, is just a fabulous session drummer. I mean, he's got a natural instinct. When he puts a fill in, it's just perfectly executed, great technique, great sound. Now, with Karen Carpenter, she's very technically proficient drummer, but
I would hesitate that you'd have quite the bottom end in terms of the power for what you need on a record. Recording live, rehearsing, there's such a difference in how you present it. It's kind of like doing sport. You can be a champion in your club, and then you can be a champion in your province and your state, and then there's a national champion, and then you're European, and then you're a world, and you're still doing the same sport. If it's football, you're still kicking the same ball, but every level has got a different intensity and a different set of requirements. Well, drumming live or in a studio is just the same.
Mm-hmm. And I say you've been doing the rounds with interviews with this. Now this is out officially, mixed by Giles Martin, right? George Martin's son.
Yes, and he's done a stunning job.
Yeah.
I had the original acetapes, which unfortunately I sold at auction, and I thought they were good because Geoff Emerick had mixed them, and he's got a pedigree second to none.
Beatles engineer, yeah.
And they were good, and but they had a roughness and rawness which I liked, but no doubt about it, Giles has done a fabulous job.
And it was, there's clips of you in there, and you are in your booth. But for me, I like the later Beatles stuff. See, I like Abbey Road. When they're a long-haired studio band, that's the Beatles for me. And this was kind of the next progression. This is, if you watch this stuff, the one-hand clapping sessions, that's Paul he's most powerful with the rock, especially with the rock songs. Well,
I think his voice on it is really in the pocket with it. It sounds fabulous. And Geoff Emerick's interviewed, I think, in 2017, and talking about his illustrious recording past. And the guy winds up by asking Geoff Emerick, what was Paul McCartney exciting in the studio, which was a funny question. And Geoff refers to the one-hand clapping. He says, well, there was this thing we did in 1974, names all the band. And then Geoff Emerick said, it was, I think he said his words were, it was amazing and absolutely outstanding how the energy and how it was just done live. And I thought, thank you, Geoff, because I felt, Paul and I were the rhythm section, so I'm an integral part of that energy.
Yes, because you are a bit of a mystery, as you say, because of the shortish stint within the band.
Definitely.
So, but also, I suppose, poignantly, now we're talking 50 years on, it's just you and Paul left from what was going on.
I know, isn't that awful?
Even Geoff Emerick's obviously no longer with us, and as you mentioned, David Litchfield, all gone.
Yes, I mean, with David, it was a real tragedy. I was speaking to him, and he was going to show me round the Isle of Wight, which is where he was living, and I had some other friends there, and so I turned up at his place. I went last summer whilst I was over in the UK, and no answer, and got the neighbours from next door who told me the sad news he'd passed, and then put me on to somebody else who phoned me and filled me in with the story. And it was just such a shock because, I was actually looking forward to, he's a really nice guy, really on the ball, because he also filmed The Empty Hand, which is a martial arts tournament. It was the first of its kind where the British team was competing with the Japanese team in London, the Michael Sobel Sports Centre. And Paul did some music for it, and Dave Litchfield filmed it. So Dave and I had an ongoing relationship because I was part of the British team competing at that time.
Yeah, this is another thing that comes in, because if anyone watches this now, I think, I know we've got the album, we've got the songs there, but I guess there's some video stuff to go with it, but also you can see the old grainy footage. Sometimes you're turning up there in the studio and your gi is the right term for the karate suit, right?
Yeah, well, what would happen is that you go into a studio and it's not time-bound, especially if you're an ex-Beatle and it's Abbey Road. Right. You basically, you can, you got carte blanche of how much time. So I never knew how much time I'd have for training. So and it's a lovely parquet floor in part of the studio. So I would get one of the guys from the Tunbridge Club to meet me there, and we'd train. So I kept up my training. And then the band would turn up, and my karate mate would hang around, meet Paul, and probably have a cup of tea. And then I'd just keep the gi on because I was already wet, and just get in the booth and start playing. So it's sort of, it looks a bit strange, but that's just how it was in those days.
But you doing that. And you'd have been eating right, and watching what you were doing. Maybe didn't sort of gel in with some of the other members of the band. It's not exactly what they were doing. Because all right, let's name names, shall we? Without getting too gossipy. But you and Jimmy McCullough came into the band at the same time, right?
Yes, Jimmy and I joined. Yes, that's was launched at the same time. Jimmy was already involved because when I auditioned. Along with all the others, he was already sitting in the theatre with Denny and Linda. Yeah, so he was around. It hadn't been publicised. So when they got me on board, then it was like the two of us. But he was already in camp, if you like. And so you allude in the differences. Well, the problem was. Back then, rock musicians were, not all, but sort of, there was an awareness, there was a lot of participation in narcotics and booze and all the rest of it. And it wasn't part of my lifestyle.
Right.
And I'm not being judgmental. It's not a question whether you're right or wrong, but if you're out of step with your immediate environment, then you're the odd one out. Now, I thought it really worked well in our favour because when we were in the States and Jimmy and Denny would get out of hand and get drunk and legless and put the Lincoln Continental in the ditch and got arrested and broke up Buddy Killen's studio, Paul obviously hit the roof, understandably. And so from that point onwards, I'd go out with them. They could get legless, but I'd be the straight guy. They got busted and that and driving drunk. Well, with me there, that didn't happen. So I actually thought, a bit square way of thinking, but I thought, well, that's cool. That's my little role, and I'm happy to do that. And I don't want to be part of the drink and booze. It's not where I'm at, but I'm not judging them. Do it, guys, but don't screw up the gig.
Sure.
Yes.
Now, I think you've told me in the past that maybe you'd go along to some of these parties, but just sort of creep off and get your head down for a bit.
I did. It's exactly what I used to do. I mean, I could only stay awake for so long, and then, and when you're a visiting band of that calibre. You're going to parties, great big mansions and that, and I just ask the host, have you got a spare couch or a spare bedroom? And they're like, bomb, and I'd be left alone. Wake me up when the boys want to go home.
Yeah. Did they feel they had to act like that? It was the kind of a rock star thing to do. And how much did Paul have to rein it in? Because it's all under his name, of course. He's the chief figure there.
Well, to actually give you a quote, when he came to me after this particular night in question. And he was really upset about it. And it's my bloody name up there. And that's it. It's his name up there. So whatever they do, it comes under the umbrella of Paul McCartney. And, he's very respectful of that. He's worked hard to be... I mean, you can't imagine the level that he's at. I mean... Lord Grade would be on the phone asking him to do this gig or that gig, and Peggy Lee, who's going off to produce some. She's a jazz singer of that era, but
yes, of course, Peggy Lee.
And Frank Sinatra. I mean, the world, would know him and want to know him and want to have a piece of him for whatever function that was going on up the road, and. It was just. It's so. Of course, he's concerned of keeping that reputation. He doesn't. Bad enough if he does it, that's fine. But he doesn't want other people ruining it for him.
No,
and they were out of order. They were irresponsible. Here we are in a A division gig, and don't screw it up. Yeah,
I mean, there's these days we'd say protecting the brand as far as the name McCartney goes.
Yeah, it's his name, and he's right to be like that, and. That's the trouble, you see. You got a few loose cannons and do too much dope or too much booze or the combination of the two. They're not really responsible for their actions.
No, right. Well, I mean, the thing is, it's good to, because you're here in person, you can, set things straight a little bit, because much is written about, friction within the band. That's usually the word that's used for you leaving. Did you and Jimmy get on most of the time?
Well, I was just reading in my diary here. I've got my 1974 diary.
Yeah, this is extraordinary.
And we just finished at Abbey Road, and Jimmy and I have gone out at 2 a.m. in the morning to have a meal together. You see, the thing is, the press, I got a little bit reluctant to talk to the press because, right, Jimmy was a Glaswegian, and the Glaswegians at that time had a reputation for having a drink, and once the drink was inside them, they wanted to fight the world. So I happened to say, being interviewed by the Melody Maker, which at the time was the Weekly Bible, it was the go-to paper. I mean, all the others were good, NME, It Sounds, but the Melody Maker for me was the best. And I'm interviewed, and I said, Jimmy can be a nasty bit of work sometimes, which is true. But what they wrote was, I hate his guts.
Right.
So I got in touch with him and said, hang on a minute, there's a bit of difference between saying someone can be a bit nasty to hating their guts. I don't hate it, but now you've printed it, the damage is done. So,
I bet they were in no hurry to do a retraction or anything.
Well, have you ever seen in the national press when there's been this horrible, insulting story about somebody, and then they do print a retraction, and the retraction is that big on page 20, and the nasty story was page 2 or something.
Sure.
It's so, and unfortunately, once something's said or a seed is planted, there's a lot of people. That's it. It's in concrete. They don't care about the retraction. Of course, you'd say that afterwards. You don't want the sticker of it. Yeah. So anyway, look, he was a little hard nut, and when he had a drink, and he was insensitive towards Linda and things like that, and the staff when he'd had a drink. I mean, as a musician, he was a great player, enormous talent, and a sad loss. But that's how it was in the 70s, and he was he was true to the typical rock guitarist of that era.
Yeah, I mean, background, maybe where he's from, how he grew up, and I don't know if he had the sort of, because he was quite short, quite small chap, whether he had too much to prove as far as that went.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, and he was young, and I mean, at 15 he was playing with 𝙤𝙤𝙢𝐵 Newman.
Right.
That's now, in those days, you could leave school at 15 and be working. Today, you're called a child at 15. So it's a whole different concept, It's, I can't get my head around it when they talk about 19-year-old children and that. In my day, blokes had 2 or 3 kids by the time they were 19. It's just like, where did all that come from?
Sure.
Bizarre.
Yeah, but we're on the subject of sort of being able to express yourself and, say this is the truth. You probably don't embrace social media very much, but one plus side of it, and there are a lot of negatives as well, but even Donald Trump has said it, the reason he keeps his account open is because whatever's reported about him, he can actually go on and say, look, that's not true. This is what really happened. They're saying this about me. And I can tell you, this is the real story from me, because this is my account.
Yes, I mean, I think with the passing of time, we can sometimes downplay something or, calm things down a little bit if we've been a bit irrational and a bit over the top with righteous anger or whatever. And with the passing of time, you think, but over the years when I've seen Paul and he had the Buddy Holly special dues in London, if I was back there then, I always got an invite, and I got tickets for his show when he played Madrid, I think 2016, 17. And what a show. I mean, he was up there for 3 hours, like, wow.
Yeah, extraordinary. He's coming back to Madrid, of course.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
And I'm considering whether to get in touch with MPO and go and see the show. I just don't like the drive, that's all.
No, right. Yeah, who needs that? You mentioned Linda there, as far as Jimmy, maybe having a pop at her occasionally, but there have been stories that you and her didn't get on. How true is that?
I find that amazing. That
she didn't like you. That's what I read somewhere.
Yeah, I read that, and I thought, well, that's really weird, because she was really into me about the diet and the training and living. And she used to say, "Oh, I really think it's great that you're like that." I mean, so when someone pointed that out, that she said she didn't like you, and whenever I'd met them, and I met them once with my mum at one of the Body Holly things, and they really went out of their way to be so nice and gracious to my mum. So I don't know where that came from, and of course I can't ask her. So, but I can understand Jimmy and Denny, because they were, hard drinking and hard living guys. I can understand them having a thing about me because I wasn't part of their gang, if you like.
Sure.
But the Linda thing would be a real surprise, because, as I say, later on she turned veggie and she had the cycling team. So I don't know where that came from. I really don't.
No, but she came in for, famously, a fair amount of stick herself. It's hard being married to a Beatle as it is, but then being brought into the band as well, real spotlight on you.
Yeah, she really got, the press used to sharpen their knives regularly to have a go, and very schneid. Yeah, because, she struggled in the beginning with, you're talking, biggest superstar in the business, and suddenly you've got a semi-pro playing with you. But I have to say, I think she was really vindicated on the one-hand clapping. Her vocals are spot on. Her keyboard playing really adds to it. There's no... And that was live, that stuff. If we didn't go back in and say, Linda, you've got to do that again, what you see is what you get. So, in fact, I've just written Paul a letter, and, old-fashioned I am, I wrote him a handwritten letter. I don't know whether he'll get it or not. I hope he does. And I've said in the letter, back in 1974, if we released that then, that would have really blunted a lot of the critics who really, had it in for her and really, gave her a hard time. And it would have, set the record straight, because she played her role, she kept her end up, and fine. And she kept Paul happy, because he went through a really tough time because of Alan Klein and the Beatles, and he got blamed for this, that, and the other. And years later, he's exonerated. But that side of the story isn't interesting. They wanted the story that, the knives were out for Paul for breaking up the Beatles, and the truth is he didn't break up. Lennon was going to leave first, and McCartney said it first, but Lennon had already said he was leaving. And they had Alan Klein as their manager, and McCartney knew that he was bad news. But
who brought him in? I thought that was Paul that brought Alan Klein along.
No, Paul wanted Eastman's lawyers to be involved. Sure. Yeah. Mick Jagger brought Klein in, even the Stones later on, they were quickly to get out of. He was a monster, he was a real go-getter.
Yeah.
His influence really had this negative effect on this phenomenal, influential band, the like of which we'll never see again.
No, there's not the opportunity for anything like that to arise. Different. Yeah, sure. But looking back though, it was the right time to finish, perhaps, but not in that way. Could you imagine them going on any longer? Because it was kind of drifting apart. That White Album was people doing their own thing and bringing their own songs in. Well,
yeah. Paul really wanted. Paul's a bit like me. He likes the idea of a group, and
yes,
you're solid, and it's you against the rest of the world, as it were. And you've got the money coming in, and you're enjoying a lifestyle, and you've come from relative working class sort of poverty, some of them, and. Suddenly you've got all this affluence, this influence. You've set a whole generation alight, and like nothing else before. Even your mums and dads and grandma. They covered all angles. And back in the day, their influence in terms of what they wore, they tick so many different boxes. It's hard to relate to it unless you live through it. Just to the degree that the national newspapers, and in those days, no internet, so the newspapers sold in the millions, and the headline just said, "They're back."
Yeah.
And you knew who they were.
Yeah,
they were so much of everybody's consciousness. You got Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Frank Sinatra recording their songs. It's just unheard of. And so it's obvious they were going to develop and move on. But I still think that if the Klein thing hadn't happened quite so nastily, and they could have got on top of the hassle of Apple, what they took on there for the best intentions, but it proved to be an absolute, uncontrollable, out of control business endeavour with the right ideas. But they'd moved on. They thought they could keep a lid on it. Well, they were just their world was so expanding.
But whether it was intentional or not, there is a thing about whether it's TV shows, you're going out on top, not carrying on, and so it starts to decline and go down. So you leave on a high, as it were. Leave them wanting more.
I don't think there
wouldn't have been an intentional thing.
No, I don't think,
out.
Knowing what I know of them, that they even thought like that. They were so into their music and their life. It wasn't like, we're the best, let's go out on top. They're just part of it, and they were part of English culture at that time. The establishment, everybody was in on them. They got knighted. That never happened before. Or not knighted, but they got recognition they got MBEs, didn't they, or OBEs?
Yes, I think didn't John or someone send it back? They didn't turn it down.
No, they didn't turn it down. What a lot of people did was send theirs back. Yeah. Because the Beatles got honoured in that way.
It's okay.
Yeah, and this is before now. You got artists, McCartney, Jagger, etc., Tom Jones. They've all been knighted. Whereas in the past it was either bastions of industry and business or military or people that had done things on that level.
Yeah.
And, that's changed over the years as everything changes.
Mm-hmm. Now, we always do this. We drift off. And I need to get it back on back on track so we can go out the one-hand clapping sessions.
Is that what we're here for?
That's what we're here for, yes. 50 years on. It's available now with GEOFF BRITTON on drums. You can see him there in his little booth because that was all live. You're all playing together live. How long were you in there? How many days was that?
Well, looking at my diary, we were in sort of... we'd go in at about 2ish, and some of the sessions, if it wasn't happening, would wrap up by about 8 or 9. Some others we'd send out for a takeaway Chinese, and we'd be there, early hours of the morning till we wrapped it up. It was 3 or 4 days, 4 days if I remember rightly.
Right.
And there's stuff on the one hand clapping that was done, like when Paul went into the backyard and the acoustic guitar. That was done on another day, not when we were all there as the band. And the 4 days. That's it. Yeah.
We've kind of explained the reason behind it, or you did answer that. But it looks to me like it's almost a rehearsal as well for an upcoming tour.
That was the plan as well. Yeah. It was like sussing it out, getting ourselves oiled up for touring, because we talked about touring and we talked about obviously the infrastructure of it, all the stage props and what we were thinking of, and the money side of things. That was all being discussed. Unfortunately, I didn't have any part of that. But
so you didn't play any big live shows with them at all?
No. As live as I got was Abbey Road, and I feel vindicated now because some of the I've been a bit egotistical, really. I've listened to some of the reviews on one hand clapping, and someone that said, like, GEOFF BRITTON's been this mystery drummer and this, that, and the other. Finally, we got him recorded, and some of them have been really, really kind to me, and comparing me, thinking that I would have perhaps done a better job than the guy that did the live stuff, and blow my own trumpet, I think I would have done, but anyway, I can say that.
And that went on to be, because it was between the albums, wasn't it, did you say, just after Band on the Run, Venus and Mars coming up, which you play on a couple of tunes that made it onto that album, but then it was the big tour, which took in Wings over America.
Fantastic tour,
so that was a huge stage.
Yes, well, I'd like to be part of that, because it would have everybody really well out of that, and it was just not only that, it was just fabulous, to play those fantastic gigs, the reception they got, touring America. I like America, and you gig in America. I have toured America subsequently with other acts, and it's like everything about America. It's on a different scale, and that's it.
Well, especially in those days, there was a little bit more glamour and mystery about it.
Yeah, it was all new, so therefore it was, the energy was there, and everybody was super helpful, and it basically. He was given the sort of silver spoon leather armchair treatment wherever you went.
Yes, well, as you say, where you sort of holed up at Carly Putnam's farm, it only needed Paul McCartney to ask, and there's probably no hesitation in saying, yeah, of course, come along. You're very welcome. The same when you were in Nashville, I suppose, they're looking after you.
Yes. We went to Opryland and the Grand Ole Opry. In fact... in Opryland, they were having the annual Fiddlers Contest.
Okay.
And it was packed. And Dolly Parton was with 𝙤𝙤𝙢𝙗𝐸. She sang with 𝙤𝙤𝙢𝙗𝙗, and it was her farewell gig. Now, we'd seen, after rehearsing during the day in the garage, we'd sit round at night and watch TV, just in the lounge at on the ranch where we were staying. Mm. And there was this programme, and kind of like a sort of religious tone to it. And there was this singer on it that we were all like raving over. It turns out to be this Dolly Parton. And when we came back from there, I was saying to people, Dolly Parton, this Dolly. Of course, nobody knew who he was talking about. You see, this is 1974. She hadn't. In fact, they haven't even heard of her outside of her state. No. So to going back to the Opryland story, so we're going there, and our host is Buddy Killen, who had the Sound Shop Studio, and he used to manage people like Joe Tex, great soul singer, and we recorded in his studio, Junior's Farm and Sally G, with all of the cream of the Nashville session guys joining in on the session. So anyway, so we're going to Opryland, and it's packed, and it was just like, you imagine, when they talk the Bible about the sea opening up, and that the crowds just sort of opened up, and Paul sort of spearheaded it, and Linda, and we go down, and this poor guy's competing in the Fiddlers Contest, who's on stage. So suddenly the heads... and all the people are looking at him. Suddenly the buzz is there that Paul McCartney, so all the heads are... So nobody's looking at this poor guy. And they're all buzzing because he's there. And we get to meet this Dolly Parton, who...
By the way, how great is Dolly Parton? She's, in real life as a person,
she's
and what she does, but she's a musician. She's fantastic.
Just a natural, lovely person.
Yeah.
What you see is what she is.
She can play guitar as well. I don't know how she does it with those nails, but it's quite something.
The voice. We were watching this sort of religious kind of gospel type program, and she was the featured singer, and we were just sitting around, as I say, and we'd go, God, this woman, who is she? What a voice! Mm. And then we learned a bit about her. She'd been singing with this 𝙤𝙤𝙢𝙗𝐻, who was really...
I think they were involved. They were in a relationship.
Absolutely.
He had his own TV show.
He was gutted that he was losing. He had the pompadour, and he had the lovely jacket with the great big sequined cactus and all that. He was the real deal country guy. And he was upset that she was going, and that was her moment. She was stepping out of that to become the Dolly Parton that she became.
And if we're talking about the one-hand clapping session, should we bring it back to that?
We're doing it again, aren't we?
That's right. But back in Abbey Road, if you look at it, it's like a double album or triple album or something, but there's so many tracks there. It's not just him running through the Band on the Run stuff, which has just come out. There's a few tracks on there, of course, but songs from his first album, which was him solo, McCartney. And I think, as you said earlier, he realised that he likes being in a band, Paul.
Yes, he does. Yeah, that's... and I get that, because... I like being in a band, and if it's a band of, they become, your mates, and you really cover for each other, then it's a lovely feeling, and kind of like you're playing music, you're a little, I don't want to over-egg it, but kind of, you're bearing you're showing off your skill, and if you're criticised or you're having a bad night, then you kind of uneases you a little bit. But if you're in a band and they're all your mates, then you don't feel that you might feel you're letting them down that night, but you don't feel vulnerable in the same way. There's something special about the mentality of a really good band where you're all close knit. Very hard to come by, but that's my sort of utopian dream of life.
Sure, but I guess coming out of the Beatles, he probably had songs to spare by the bucket load, and he wanted to do something without bumping up against other people, and put his own stuff out on that album. Working with Linda, of course, on there as well. But you ran through a few of those, but there's all sorts on there. The couple of tunes that you ended up on Venus and Mars playing on, Junior's Farm. Sally G, though, the version on there, it's him doing acoustic, right? It's not. Yeah, you're not on there.
No. That was done on that day when he's just in there on his own. Yeah, it's a nice version of Sally G, actually. Yeah.
And I've heard you say that him doing Maybe I'm Amazed, which was on that first album, right? I think I'm right in saying, anyway. That version he does on the one-hand clapping, it's just outstanding.
For me, I actually think he sings My Love the best
and
ever.
My Love as well, yes, is on there.
His voice on that, I thought, when I listened to it, I thought, my God. Well, I used to listen to it on YouTube, and I used to say to people, check out Paul's version of My Love on one-hand clapping, because he's just right at the top of his game with his voice, and that he can do anything with it, and it's so emotional when it needs to be, and it's not. It's got class, you see. You've got people now, great singers, but it's like musical, vocal gymnastics. You know, they got to sling it out every verse, how good they are. Whereas a classy guy sings the song, and if the song needs that little particular embellishment, then they can do it without showing you all the time, I've got this, you know.
Yeah. But as you say, it is that feel and emotion you've got to bring to it sometimes. Like Ringo played for the song. He wasn't showing off.
Ringo's real class. And do you know what? When in the early days, they really used to take the mick out of him. And I remember seeing Buddy Rich at Ronnie Scott's, and Buddy Rich, he'd go, and he was, you know, mimicking Ringo. And there's a great American jazz drummer called Jack DeJohnette, and he just said in an interview somewhere just how good Ringo was, and that kind of like, for me, that endorsed it.
Yeah, and all those Beatles songs were all different as well. It's not doing the same thing every time.
What did they play on the radio the other day? I just heard dun, 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 In My Life.
Right.
Yeah, and I thought I was just doing the washing up. And I thought, hang on a minute. Dun, dun, dun. I thought, beautiful. Just beautiful. The song's great. Everybody does the right bit. And I thought, God, there's stuff, you know, you imagine it's so great, but when you listen to it again, you realise that you were right. It is great.
Yeah, and if we're getting geeky as well, and 𝐸𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻, it's I've heard Ringo explain it. He's a left-handed drummer playing on a right-handed kit.
Yes, yeah. That's if you want to see him at his best in terms of his ability. If you look at how he played live at the Shea Stadium, and because they couldn't hear each other,
no, right.
You know, and no monitor. I mean, absolute nightmare. Stuck in a great big bloody baseball pitch, and the crowd's bloody 200 yards away. But his rolls, he's really fast, and because, as you say, he's left-handed, but he's playing a right-handed kit. So. Come together.
Yes.
You know, some of the little things you think, hang on, how did he do that? Well, when you know that he's leading with his left hand and not his right hand, because then you can work out how he did some of those things. But that aside, that was a challenge in itself, which he just overcome naturally. Now, going back to the Wings thing, Wings Over America, the Joe English guy. He's a left-handed guy playing a right-handed kit, but he's playing it left-handed. So it just doesn't look right. It looks kind of erratic. So where you would normally play the left hand on the snare drum and the right hand on the cymbal, he's got the kit set up for that, but he's playing the left hand on the hi-hat or the cymbal and the right hand on the snare. And I don't like to see that. For me, just, you know, I like to see my drummers as most drummers are.
Yeah, is that like Phil Collins, though? He plays because he's... is he called open-handed? Or is that a difference?
He plays a left-handed kit right-handed, but Ian Pace plays a left-handed kit left-handed. So, he's playing the right way for a left-handed person, where the others are playing it... they're set up as if it's a right-handed kit, but they're playing it left-handed. And Ringo, this is complicating things, it's a right-handed kit, and he plays it right-handed, although he's left-handed, if that can make sense.
So your right hand should be doing the hi-hat, the left hand should be the snare, right?
That's what he does, yeah.
Yeah.
But naturally, it should be the other way around for him.
Yes, right, yeah.
And so that makes it unusual how he starts off doing some of his roles and how he comes out of it. You think, hang on a minute. But once you know that he's slightly, the other way round, in that sense, his hands, that is, then you can work out how he got there.
Yeah, and you probably don't see as much of him as I do because he's on social media, okay, but he's doing great and he looks great and he's just fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I saw him in a chat show not long ago and I thought, in fact, I was talking to Denny Laine last week.
Now, he was the drummer that you kind of took over from in Wings, right?
Yeah, he left the day they were flying off to do to Lagos, Nigeria, to do the band on the run.
Yeah, so he would have been playing on the album.
He quit.
Yeah.
And quite rightly so, because he was really being treated unfairly for what he'd achieved and the money and all that. That's another. So it's all written up in that book by Adrian Sinclair. And so anyway, they should never let him go because he was a wonderful drummer. So I was talking to him last week, and he was meeting up with Jim Keltner, who's a great drummer.
Yeah.
And they were going to Ringo's party. So they're all mates, you see, so which is great to hear.
Well, Ringo's got his all-star band, which when you look at the lineup, sometimes it's amazing. He's got Steve Lukather in there, sometimes Steve Vai. At one time, he had guys from the band. He had Levon Helm in there.
Levon Helm.
Yeah.
Levon Helm was a lovely drummer.
anyone will come and play with Ringo. But on the other tracks on the One Hand Clapping sessions, you do a version of Live and Let Die, which had just, I suppose that was that year, wasn't it? That came out. I can't remember which year the movie was, Roger Moore.
Yeah, it was all at that time, for sure. Yeah, it got to number 2, and it got voted a musical. Yeah, that's right, great.
Because that's nice, because you drop into the sort of reggae middle eight.
Yeah. It's all in there. Well, this is it with Paul. I mean, he musical, 1920s, vaudeville, pop, country, rock. He can do it all. Because we do a country song, Blue Moon of Kentucky.
Yes, there's a couple of sort of standards, if you use that word, standards on there. And I notice he launches into a couple of Beatles tunes, but not all of them, just to tease you a little bit. You're not on those,
that's all just him on the piano.
Yeah.
I wasn't there when he did that. That was the day when he did the acoustic stuff and that. For me, I wish he'd kept that on one, because it's a double album or double CD, and I wish we'd had all the continuity of all the stuff that the band played. So because the other stuff kind of interrupts the flow for me. Because 1 minute it's banging away and really rocking great, and then it goes to acoustic, and it's kind of like. It doesn't sit right. I don't like that as much.
Right, and I mean, I haven't seen the video, but I listened to it, and I assume that's Denny Laine doing "Go Now," the version you do on.
It's Denny,
because that was him on the original with the Moody Blues, of course.
If you see Denny going back to those 1964 beat contest things of the year, poll winners, and he sings with the Moody Blues, and he doesn't half sing well live. He really cuts it. Yeah, and a good harmonica player.
Yeah, I think the first half of it I've watched. There's about 40 minutes of it on YouTube. So obviously I've been through that. There's a part where you're kind of taking direction from Linda, which we'll come back to her. I wondered how you sort of looked at that. Was it just part of being in a band, or would you take much notice? I think it was just you came in on a. She wanted to come in on a beat behind, or she spotted something anyway.
Yeah, didn't I come in late?
Maybe, yes.
Yeah, well, to me that's band life. I mean, it's really weird. You see, I think I read a comment somewhere. They were being sarcastic when the guys in the band said, one said, "Have you come to play your drums, or are you going to chop them up?" You see, because of the martial arts thing,
right? Okay.
And they interpreted that as like sort of sarcasm or belittling. Whereas when you're in a band, insulting, it's like soldiers. It's like they tough guys really take the mick out of each other, and and if you saw it in print, you'd think they'd hate each other. But that's how it is.
Yeah.
And I think if you're in a good band, you don't, and you're confident who you are and what you are, then someone can say, oh look, that's too fast, or you're overdoing this, and you know, you don't shrivel up. It's the Robert Mitchum story, you know, about being told and having the confidence to say, no, that's okay, that's right, I can do it.
Well, if you can, I mean, if something like that musically, and you can then hear it yourself, then you'll put it right.
We all make mistakes. You know, Paul makes mistakes, come in early, or, you know, oh, God, start that again, I fluffed it. In fact, if you listen carefully to Junior's Farm, Jimmy plays a bum note on it.
Oh, really?
And I don't know how that wasn't taken out. I'm surprised that wasn't mixed out, but it's there.
But just while we're talking about Linda as well, I mean, we've said that version of It's My Love, isn't it? You say it's probably the best version of that Paul's ever done. But she's around, and do you think that has an effect that she's there with him? Because they were quite a team, of course. Yeah,
you see, she was very, very vital to him, and I mean, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I mean, the ladies in his life, I mean, she lost her mum when she was young, the same as Paul did, and there was kind of like a unity there. It was, and you know, Alan Klein, the Beatles, the press bin on him, the money was all frozen in courts at the time. Linda was getting slagged off, you know, at the time. You know, what was she doing? Working with Paul McCartney. It was all that. But she was really a pillar of strength for him. She was really you know, she was good for him.
Well, she wasn't any kind of wallflower. She was a proper New York girl.
Oh, she's hard as nails like that. I mean, she'd give as good as she gets. Yeah. We were at we were doing Top of the Pops, and there's something she wanted to do with the keyboards, and the guy said, oh, no, you can't do that. It'd be a fire risk and all the rest of it. And I went, hang on a minute, what's you on about? And Paul said, Jeff, it's okay. You watch, she'll handle it. Yeah. She did. Well, yeah. I mean, she was a tough New Yorker, and she'd been in the business a long time because she was a photographer. And
yes, that's right,
from
the Eastman family.
She had a little bit of a reputation. So, you know. But you think of it, right, how different it was. Like, when we finished on the farm, they had this like shooting brake, this van, no, not van, a state car. They call them shooting brakes.
Shooting brake, yes, of course.
And they got a U-Haul little trailer thing on the back. So it was Paul, Linda, and the girls jumped in, and then just drove from there up to New York, took a hotel or whatever, and just, you know, now imagine that today. You know, they stopped at a burger bar or whatever, or Denny's, and just have a milkshake and a cup of tea or whatever they had. Just like you and I would do, you know, and that's how life, you know, the security thing, the idiots doing things. It was, it's kind of different. It's probably what this kind of relationship people want and strive for, and they found it. I mean, they were very natural and very, you know, I think, didn't they? Isn't there a story they only ever had one night apart or something?
Oh, I don't know. Probably
there is something. It's something like that. Probably when he was in jail in Japan or something like that. You know, but.
But there's a part in, I've mentioned that run through Jet already from Band on the Run in the studio there in Abbey Road, and where she does her keyboard solo. He's looking around at her and just a big smile on his face, and you can tell it's just that team, you know, so proud to be
He's taught her, you see.
Yeah.
You know, and like, you know, we're doing it live. And, you know, warts and all, really, in that. And, like, you know, we didn't have to do her part again. You know, we might say, well, that didn't feel quite as good. Let's run it again. And some of them aren't the first take. A lot of them were quite sort of spontaneous. But some, you know, you might say, take 20. Well, he used to say that as a joke as well. You know, take 85 or whatever. Of course, it wasn't. But, you know. No, I mean, I think... Well, she became vindicated because, you know, the Wings Over America, they couldn't really criticise it. But if they'd released that in 1974, as I said previously, she would have, you know, people would have had to have, owned up and thought, she did a bit.
But overall, I mean, all of that, good memories for you? Fond memories?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because it's kind of like... every now and then I'd look at it on YouTube, because it was, as you say, there were bits of it on YouTube, and I'd wonder about it. And also I was in a group called the Keys.
Yes.
And the Keys album is played on YouTube, and sometimes at the same moment I'd listen to that, And there's some East of Eden on there as well, the Paris Olympia 1970. And some nights I do get a bit like, what could have been sort of thing. And like, why didn't that make it? Or how come, it does have a sobering effect at times. Other times I look at it and think, God, and then you also looking at it critically, objectively as well, energy-wise, how, but certainly with the Keys stuff, I actually thought the Keys could have been a contender, and it wasn't. And when I listened to I think, God, that stuff is so good. And I read the reviews, what people say about it, and I think, God, yeah, I think like that too. Why?
But on the one hand, clapping stuff, you must look back at that and think, I did all right there.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some drumming mates, and like the one who told me about the Geoff Emerick interview, he said, you've got to listen to it at the end and you'll realise why. And they've done exactly the same as you. They phoned me up and they've gone, God, I've just listened to Jet, or I just listened to Soily, and that, wow, what you did, it was great. And they're my mates, and there's no false modesty with all of us,
sure.
And these guys they're good players, they've done well.
What's been nice with the release of this one hand clapping is that it's not like you've been vindicated, because no one was saying you weren't any good, but it was just that mystery. No one knew much about you, so now we're getting to see it, and you can see what a talent was there, and still is. Some of
the comments, some of the reviewers in America I've actually used the word that I've been vindicated, and some of the guys said, that Geoff Britton is backbeat, and comparing me to the other guys, and it was nice to hear that, because you kind of wonder, you think, well, what was there a problem?
But it's nice to bring it to light, because we've used the word mystery a lot here, but there was that,
the lid off it.
Yeah.
And now
sure.
There's the evidence.
Yeah.
You either like it or you don't like it, but you can't say it ain't good enough. That's the thing. Yes, I agree with you.
And of course, seal of approval from Geoff Emerick.
Geoff Emerick.
What can you say? He's worked with the best.
He was just a beautiful human being. And another one of those guys from England that are just immersed in music, and everything he do. You look at what he's recorded and he's been involved in, and Paul would be so relying on him. Geoff, I want this sound. Geoff, I want that effect. And this guy would stay up all night researching it and getting it.
So now this is out with the one hand clapping. We got the album, and I guess there's some video stuff to go with it as well. It's not a film, is there? Do we know that?
They're talking about cleaning up the film.
Yeah,
I think
it's very grainy.
The film that Dave Litchfield shot, I think that's 50 odd minutes, because in the early days I saw the whole thing once on YouTube, or someone sent me a copy of it, and the whole thing through, warts and all, as it were. But I think because it's 50 years old, they've got to kind of clean it up.
Which you can do now.
They certainly do. I mean, put colour on a black and white film now.
Yeah.
So I hope they do, because Dave Litchfield, for his memory as well, he did a great job. And if the music, is being appreciated, then people will, certainly all the hardcore McCartney fans will want to see the film as well, or own the film, which I'd love to see it or own it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a big part of his career, right in the middle of the 70s there, that you should be able to see for yourself.
It's on the back of his masterpiece, and that's, to me, that period. For me, was the best. The early stuff he did on his own, and that you finding his feet, and then he really hits it with Band on the Run, follows it up with the next one. After that, silly love songs and that sort of stuff. Emily Imery, not my scene.
No,
so
sure. I like playing the bass line on silly love songs. That's fun. That's fun.
That's always good. Yeah. The one record that he did that I thought was really great, especially, I don't know if you remember seeing the video of it, because he played all.
I know what you were going to say. Coming up. Yeah.
That was super.
Yeah. Do you know who they all are? I guess one's Hank Marvin. Do you know who the drummer is supposed to be? Is that
Ginger Baker.
Is it Ginger Bakewell or Mick Fleetwood?
Yeah, because he does a few little things that only Ginger did, you know, and he had the beard and the thing.
I thought it might be Mick Fleetwood.
No, it was supposed to be Ginger Baker.
Right, okay, and then of course he plays himself as a Beatle. In the suit there.
I mean, it's just that must have taken some work to do all that.
Well, if anyone could do it, Paul's got the resources to do it.
Yeah, well, he can play all the instruments. I mean,
You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but are you likely to see any money from this? No, it's come out.
Well, at the moment, F all. No,
I don't know how it works because you're not a songwriter on there.
No. Right. What there is now, and it's something that Hal Blaine talked about, and I didn't realise that it occurred to all of us. If you've played on a record now, you're not a song or publishing royalty, but you get a playing royalty, and there's a company that set itself up that recoups that. Trouble is, it can only go back 6 years. So for me, that's a bit of a dodo because most of my recordings were way back, like Manfred Mann and stuff like that. So like their playing days would have diminished. With this just coming out, so this might get a lot of, some of the tracks might get a lot of airplay globally because this company goes after it globally. Now, in terms of getting any money from MPL, no one's approached me, zilch, but I'm going. I'm debating whether I have the right to sort of say, look, you're going to be paying tax on this. Why don't you? I don't know how it works, but I'm kind of thinking, well, wouldn't hurt them really. It's I'm a big part of it, and it's going to generate some dosh. So, but hitherto, I've been given some merchandise. I've got a lovely sweater and a T-shirt and what have you, and I've got the records sent to me. But as you say, nothing else at the moment. Well,
let's hope that works out for you, because it's, as I say, it's been nice to have this come out 50 years on from those original sessions, and it's good to see you, and thankfully we got around to doing it eventually.
Well, thanks for your time, Moody. It's always great to talk music with you because you really love music, and we do go off on tangents, which we try not to, but it's inevitable.
Anyone watching the final version of this will have no idea how long we've been here.
Exactly.
About other stuff,
well, this is our second string, isn't it? The first one just went on for 4 hours or something.
Yeah, well, I'll mention a musician like Hal Blaine that we've talked about, and that'll be us for another 20 minutes. You share
a lot of the same, incredible.
Well, obviously, I wasn't around at the time, but this is YouTube. This is what it's done. It's filled in a lot of holes in my knowledge of various things, whether it's World War II or music.
Yes,
everything's on there.
Yeah, World War II. Yeah, I mean, we've digressed again.
Did I wrap up? I can't remember.
I don't know. I just don't know.
It's still rolling. It's still recording.